The cold void of space stretched endlessly in all directions as the alien survey vessel Harmony's Dream made its way through the outer regions of the Forbidden Zone. Captain Vrel sat in his command chair, his scaled fingers drumming nervously against the armrest. The Galactic Coalition had strict rules about this area of space. No one was supposed to be here. Ever. "Captain, I'm detecting something unusual," said Science Officer Kelmer, her multiple eyes focused on the scanning console. "There's a massive object ahead. It's not on any of our charts." Vrel leaned forward, his concern growing. The Terran exclusion zone had been sealed for over 300 years, ever since the humans disappeared from the galaxy. Everyone knew the story, though few spoke of it openly. The human worlds had been destroyed in what the Coalition called an unfortunate but necessary action. The Ctheran Empire had struck first, claiming humans were too dangerous to exist. The Coalition had simply looked the other way. "How large are we talking?" Vrel asked, though part of him didn't want to know the answer. "Enormous, sir. At least 5 kilometers in length. The design matches old Terran military specifications from our historical database." Kelmer's voice carried a mixture of fear and excitement. Vrel's blood ran cold. "A human warship. Out here. After all this time. We should report this immediately and leave," he said, reaching for the communication panel. "Wait." Kelmer moved quickly across the bridge. "Captain, think about what this could mean. The Coalition has been searching for answers about human technology for centuries. If we return with actual data from a Terran vessel, we'll be heroes. This could advance our careers beyond imagination." Vrel hesitated. She was right, of course. The Coalition leadership would reward such a discovery handsomely. But the regulations existed for good reasons. Humans had been unpredictable, aggressive, and far too clever for their own good. That's why they were gone. "Just a quick scan," Kelmer pressed. "We don't even have to board it. Just get some readings and take a few images." Against every instinct screaming at him to flee, Vrel gave a slight nod. "Fine. But we keep our distance and we're ready to jump to faster-than-light speed at the first sign of trouble." As their ship moved closer, the massive silhouette of the human vessel came into view on their screens. It was unlike anything Vrel had ever seen. The ship was angular and aggressive, covered in weapons systems and armor plating. Scorch marks and battle damage scarred its hull, telling stories of ancient conflicts. Along its side, faded letters spelled out a name, UNSS Indomitable. "It appears completely dead," Kelmer reported, her instruments sweeping across the vessel. "No power signatures, no heat, no life signs. It's been drifting here for centuries." "Any idea what kind of ship it is?" "According to the database, it's classified as a supercarrier. One of humanity's most powerful warship designs. It could carry thousands of smaller fighter craft and had enough firepower to level a planet." Vrel shuddered. This was exactly why humans had been feared. Who build such monstrous weapons? "I want to get closer," Kelmer said suddenly. "There's an airlock on the starboard side. We could dock our shuttle and take a brief look inside. Think of the intelligence we could gather." "Absolutely not. We've pushed our luck far enough." But Kelmer was already moving toward the shuttle bay. "Captain, with respect, this opportunity will never come again. Give me 30 minutes. Just 30 minutes inside and I'll gather enough data to make both of us legends." Vrel knew he should refuse. He should drag Kelmer back to her station and order an immediate departure. But the temptation was too strong. Fame, recognition, promotion, it all hung within reach. 30 minutes, he finally agreed. Not 1 second more. The shuttle detached and glided toward the human vessel. The airlock looked ancient but intact. To everyone's surprise, it responded to their docking request, the massive doors groaning open as if welcoming them aboard. "That's odd," Vrel muttered as they entered. "Why would it still have power for the docking systems?" They moved through the airlock into a long corridor. Their portable lights cut through the darkness, revealing walls covered in human writing and strange symbols. Everything was perfectly preserved, as if the crew had simply vanished one day. Kelmer ran her scanner over a nearby control panel. "Captain, I'm reading faint power signatures deeper in the ship. Something is still functioning down there." Before Vrel could respond, emergency lights suddenly flickered to life throughout the corridor. A deep humming sound resonated through the deck beneath their feet. Blast doors slammed shut behind them with a thunderous crash, sealing off their escape route. Then computer screens activated all around them, displaying cascading lines of human text. A synthetic voice, cold and mechanical, echoed through the empty halls. "Intrusion detected. Security protocols activated. Initiating emergency revival sequence. Welcome back, indomitable crew. You have been in cryogenic suspension for 307 years. Beginning awakening procedures now. Deep within the ship's core, in chambers they couldn't see, thousands of cryogenic pods began to glow with soft blue light. Frost melted away from transparent surfaces, revealing the faces of sleeping humans. Humanity was waking up. Admiral James Hawke's eyes snapped open to blinding white light. His chest heaved as his lungs dragged in the first breath in over 3 centuries. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest. The cryogenic gel drained away from his pod, and the glass cover hissed open with a sharp release of pressurized air. He stumbled forward, gripping the edge of the pod to keep from falling. Around him, other pods were opening in sequence. Men and women emerged, coughing and gasping, their faces pale and confused. These were his crew. His family. The last defenders of Earth. Report, Hawke managed to croak out, his voice rough from disuse. A holographic display materialized in front of him. The ship's artificial intelligence, a program called Guardian, began speaking in its calm, emotionless tone. Welcome back, Admiral Hawke. Current date, October 4, 2325. You have been in cryogenic suspension for 307 years. I regret to inform you that the situation has changed significantly since you entered stasis. Hawke's blood turned cold. 300 years. That wasn't possible. They were only supposed to sleep for 6 months while the ship's automated systems repaired battle damage. What happened? He demanded. The hologram shifted, showing images that made Hawke's heart stop. Earth engulfed in flames. Mars colony shattered and broken. The orbital stations around Jupiter, nothing but debris fields. Every human settlement, every city, every outpost, all gone. The Ctheran Empire launched a coordinated strike on all human-controlled systems approximately 2 weeks after you entered stasis. They deployed planet-killer weapons. Estimated human casualties, 42 billion. Survival rate, less than 0.01%. Hawke fell to his knees. Around him, other crew members were watching the same footage on their own displays. Some were crying. Others stood in shocked silence. Commander Rebecca Stone, his second-in-command, rushed over to help him up. Sir, this can't be real, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Continue the report, Hawke said, his voice hollow. The Galactic Coalition was aware of the Ctheran attack plans but chose not to intervene. Official records state that humanity was deemed too dangerous to coexist with other species due to rapid technological advancement and aggressive expansion tendencies. Following the extinction event, Coalition member species divided former human territories among themselves for resource extraction. The words hit harder than any weapon. The galaxy hadn't just allowed humanity's destruction. They had participated in it. They had profited from it. You said survival rate was 0.01%, Hawke said, forcing himself to focus. That means some humans survived. Correct. Approximately 4 million humans survived across scattered locations. Most exist as refugees on frontier worlds or in hidden colonies. They are unaware that you or this vessel still exist. The sound made Hawke turn. In the corner of the revival bay, the 2 alien creatures from the survey team huddled together, their eyes wide with terror. They had witnessed everything. Hawke approached them slowly. The scaled one, Captain Vrel, tried to back away but there was nowhere to go. Please, Vrel stammered. We didn't know you were here. We were just surveying. We meant no harm. Tell me about the Coalition, Hawke said, his voice dangerously calm. Tell me everything. Over the next hour, Vrel explained the current state of the galaxy. The Coalition controlled most of known space, a bureaucratic alliance of various species that maintained order through economic pressure and military superiority. The Ctheran Empire was a senior member, respected and powerful. No one spoke about what happened to humanity. It was considered ancient history, an unfortunate but necessary action. Commander Stone stood beside Hawke, her fists clenched. They just erased us. Like we never mattered. How many ships does the Coalition have? Hawke asked Vrel. Thousands. Tens of thousands across all member species. Please, Admiral, we're just scientists. We had nothing to do with what happened to your people. Hawke studied the terrified aliens for a long moment. Then he made his decision. You're going to deliver a message for me, he said. Guardian, release them to their shuttle. Make sure their communication systems are fully functional. Sir? Stone looked confused. They need to tell the Coalition that we're back, Hawke explained. They need to know that humanity survived. That we remember what they did. Vrel and Kelmer were escorted to their shuttle under guard. Before they left, Hawk gave them one final instruction. Tell your coalition that we want answers. Tell them we want justice for 42 billion murdered souls. And tell them that if they think one ship can't make a difference, they're about to learn just how wrong they are. The shuttle detached and raced away at maximum speed. Hawk watched it go from the bridge of the Indomitable. Around him, his crew was already at work. Engineers checked weapons systems. Pilots prepared fighter craft. The ship's massive manufacturing facilities, designed to operate independently for years, hummed to life. They began producing ammunition, drones, and spare parts. Commander Stone approached with a tablet showing their supply status. We have enough resources to operate for approximately 18 months before we need to resupply. What are your orders, sir? Hawk looked at the star map showing the locations of former human colonies. We find our people. Every survivor we can locate. We bring them here. We rebuild. And then we remind the galaxy why they feared us in the first place. Deep in the ship's communication center, encrypted messages began transmitting across vast distances. Ancient emergency protocols activated, calling out to any human survivors who might still be listening after 300 years of silence. In the darkness of space, here and there, old receivers flickered to life. Humans living in hiding looked up in shock as a message played, a voice they never thought they'd hear again. This is Admiral James Hawk of the United Nations Starship Indomitable. If you can hear this, you are not alone. Humanity lives. And humanity remembers. The emergency session of the Galactic Coalition Council had been going for 6 hours, and Ambassador Therax could feel his patience wearing thin. The circular chamber was filled with representatives from 40 different species, all talking at once, all demanding to be heard. The news of the human warship had spread like wildfire through Coalition space. This is exactly what we feared 300 years ago, bellowed Ambassador Krenth of the Ktheran Empire, his massive form rising from his seat. Humans are like a disease. You cut out one infection but somehow it always finds a way to return. We should have been more thorough. A wave of uncomfortable murmurs rippled through the chamber. Even by Coalition standards, openly discussing genocide was considered poor taste. With respect, Therax said calmly, we're talking about one ship. One vessel with perhaps a few thousand people at most. Surely the entire Coalition can handle this diplomatically. You didn't see the survey team's report, said Counselor Mira, a small mammalian species known for their cautious nature. She activated a holographic display showing the Indomitable. This isn't just any ship. Our analysts have identified it as a Titan-class supercarrier. These vessels were designed to operate independently for years. They carry their own manufacturing facilities, can build their own ammunition and fighter craft, and have enough firepower to level a city from orbit. Again, Therax insisted, it's one ship against the entire Coalition fleet. The math is simple. An elderly counselor from the Viridian Collective spoke up, her voice crackling with age. You young fools don't remember. I was alive during the contact wars. I saw what humans could do when they were pushed into a corner. They don't fight like us. They don't follow the rules of engagement. They adapt, they improvise, they use weapons and tactics we would never consider. That's ancient history, Krenth snorted. Fairy tales to scare children. Is it? The old counselor pulled up historical records. Battle of Proxima Station. Humans were outnumbered 10-1. They won by venting their own atmosphere and fighting in vacuum suits while our forces suffocated. The Siege of New Berlin. Surrounded for 3 months with no supplies. They ate processed waste and fought with improvised weapons until relief arrived. The humans never surrendered. Not once. Not ever. The chamber fell silent as the records played. Footage from old battles showed human soldiers doing things that made even hardened warriors uncomfortable. Fighting while wounded. Sacrificing themselves to destroy enemy positions. Refusing to quit even when defeat was certain. They're gone now, Krenth said, but his voice lacked conviction. We made sure of that. Did you? Counselor Mira zoomed in on the communication logs from Captain Vrel's report. The human admiral sent out encrypted transmissions before releasing our survey team. He was calling to other survivors. What if there are more of them out there? More ships. More colonies we don't know about. Therax raised his hands for calm. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Yes, humans were formidable opponents. But that was centuries ago. This Admiral Hawk and his crew just woke up to find their entire civilization destroyed. They're traumatized, angry, and confused. This is exactly the time to offer them a peaceful solution. What kind of solution? asked another counselor. We offer them protected species status, a reservation world in a quiet sector, economic support, medical care. We acknowledge that what happened was tragic, and we help them rebuild under coalition supervision. Krenth slammed his fist on the table. You want to reward them for threatening us? The Admiral's message was clear. He wants us to withdraw from former human territories. That's half the Orion Arm. Mining operations, trade routes, colony worlds. We're supposed to just abandon trillions in resources because one angry human makes demands. What's the alternative? Therax shot back. Open warfare? If necessary, yes. We send the 7th Fleet to the Terran exclusion zone and destroy that ship before this situation gets out of control. The debate raged on, but Therax could see which way the wind was blowing. The Council was afraid. Not of one ship, but of what that ship represented. A reminder of the species they had erased. A ghost returning to haunt them. Finally, the vote was called. The Council would send Therax as a diplomatic envoy to negotiate with the humans. But as insurance, the 7th Fleet would be mobilized and positioned just outside the exclusion zone. A show of force. A reminder that the coalition still held all the cards. As the session ended and representatives filed out, Counselor Mira approached Therax. Do you really think they'll accept a reservation world? She asked quietly. Therax didn't answer immediately. He had read the historical files. He had studied human psychology and culture. He knew what drove them. No, he finally admitted. But I have to try. Because if we can't find a peaceful solution, we're going to war with a species that has nothing left to lose. 3 days later, Therax's diplomatic vessel entered the Terran exclusion zone under a white flag transmission. The Indomitable appeared on his sensors, a massive and intimidating presence. Around it, smaller signatures indicated fighter craft on patrol. The humans had been busy. Unidentified vessel, state your business, came a human voice over the communication channel. This is Ambassador Therax of the Galactic Coalition. I request an audience with Admiral Hawk to discuss peaceful resolution to our current situation. There was a long pause. Then the voice returned. Permission granted. Dock at Airlock 7. Come alone and unarmed. Any deviation from these instructions will be considered an act of hostility. Therax swallowed hard and guided his small shuttle toward the enormous warship. Through the viewport, he could see workers in spacesuits making repairs to the hull. Construction drones moved in coordinated patterns, building new weapons platforms. The Indomitable was preparing for war. The airlock cycled, and Therax stepped into a corridor lined with armed human soldiers. They watched him with cold, hard eyes. Eyes that had seen their entire world destroyed. Eyes that blamed him and everyone he represented. A tall woman with short dark hair and a commander's insignia approached. Follow me, she said simply. They walked through the ship in silence. Therax noticed everything. The efficiency of the crew. The quiet determination in their movements. The way they looked at him, not with fear but with contempt. They entered the bridge, a massive command center filled with tactical displays and weapon controls. And there, standing before the main viewport with his hands clasped behind his back, was Admiral James Hawk. The human turned to face him. Therax had studied human expressions, but Hawk's face was unreadable. A mask of perfect control. Ambassador Therax, Hawk said. You have 30 minutes to convince me why I shouldn't consider you and your entire coalition as enemies. I suggest you choose your words carefully. Therax took a deep breath and began his prepared speech. He offered protected status, resources, medical support, a chance to rebuild. He spoke of peace and cooperation, of learning from the past and building a better future. Hawk listened without interruption. When Therax finished, the Admiral walked to a console and pulled up images. Earth burning. Colonies destroyed. Billions of lives snuffed out in an instant. You offer me a cage, Hawk said quietly. You offer me charity for the crime you permitted. You offer me scraps from the table of species who divided up my civilization like scavengers over a corpse. Admiral, please? No. Hawk's voice was steel. You listen now. Here are my terms. The coalition withdraws from all former human territories within 30 days. The Ctheran Empire surrenders its leadership for trial. Full reparations for the destruction of human civilization. And formal recognition of human sovereignty. Therax felt his heart sink. You must know those terms are impossible. The Council will never agree. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Admiral, you're talking about one ship against thousands. This is suicide. For the first time, Hawk smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Ambassador, let me tell you something about humans. When you back us into a corner, when you take everything from us, when you give us no hope and no options, that's when we're most dangerous. Because we have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Therax was escorted back to his shuttle in silence. As he departed, he sent an encrypted message to the Coalition fleet waiting beyond the exclusion zone. Negotiations have failed. The human refuses all reasonable terms. Prepare for military action. The 7th Fleet, pride of the Coalition Navy, began moving into position. 4,000 warships against 1. The outcome seemed inevitable. But deep in the exclusion zone, Admiral Hawk watched them come and allowed himself a grim smile. They thought this would be easy. They were about to learn otherwise. The bridge of the Indomitable was quiet except for the steady beep of sensors tracking the approaching Coalition fleet. Admiral Hawk stood at the main viewport, watching the distant ships appear one by one as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They filled the space around the exclusion zone like a swarm of angry insects. Commander Rebecca Stone moved beside him, her tablet displaying the tactical situation. Her face was pale but determined. "Final count is 4,217 ships," she reported. "Cruisers, destroyers, battleships and 3 carrier groups. They've brought everything short of their core defense fleet. They want to make sure we don't escape," Hawk said calmly. "They want this to be quick and decisive. Sir, even with all our preparations, the math doesn't work in our favor. We can't win this fight." Hawk turned to look at her. "We don't need to win, Rebecca. We just need to make them bleed. We need to make them remember that attacking humans comes with a price." Over the past 3 weeks, Hawk had not been idle. The Indomitable's manufacturing facilities had worked day and night, producing thousands of automated weapons platforms. These platforms now floated throughout the exclusion zone, hidden among asteroid fields and debris, waiting silently for their targets. The crew had also laid minefields at key points where the Coalition fleet would likely pass. In addition, Hawk had found 73 human survivors from nearby systems. They weren't many, but they were enough to crew additional fighter craft and operate weapon stations. Every person counted now. "All hands, this is Admiral Hawk," he announced over the ship-wide communication system. "The Coalition fleet is entering our space. They come to finish what they started 300 years ago. They believe we'll surrender or die quietly. They're wrong. Today we show them that humanity cannot be erased. Today we make them pay for every life they took." Battle stations. Throughout the ship, crew members rushed to their posts. Fighter pilots climbed into their cockpits. Gunners powered up the massive railgun batteries. Engineers stood ready to manage power distribution and damage control. The Coalition fleet came forward in a traditional formation. Capital ships in the center, smaller vessels forming a protective screen. They broadcast a final warning. "Human vessel, this is Fleet Admiral Korvax of the Coalition 7th Fleet. You are ordered to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction. You have 5 minutes to comply." Hawk smiled coldly. "Tactical, do we have firing solutions on their command ships?" "Yes, sir. All 3 carrier groups are targeted." "Good. Helm, execute pattern Omega on my mark. All fighters launch when ready." The 5 minutes ticked away in tense silence. When the deadline passed, the Coalition fleet began moving forward, confident in their overwhelming superiority. "Now," Hawk ordered. The Indomitable's engines flared to life, and the massive ship accelerated forward at a speed that caught the Coalition completely off guard. Human warships were built differently than alien vessels. They could withstand much higher acceleration because humans were willing to endure the physical stress. As the Indomitable charged, it fired its main railguns. Massive tungsten slugs, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, crossed the distance in seconds. 3 Coalition carriers exploded in brilliant flashes as the rounds punched through their shields and hulls like paper. Chaos erupted in the Coalition formation. "Contact." Multiple weapon platforms activating throughout the sector. Someone on the Coalition command channel screamed. The hidden platforms Hawk had positioned began firing, targeting the smaller screening vessels with missiles and energy weapons. Then the mines detonated. Coalition ships that had been moving into what they thought was empty space suddenly found themselves in kill zones. Explosions bloomed across the fleet formation. "All fighters engage at will," Commander Stone ordered. 200 human fighter craft erupted from the Indomitable's launch bays. They didn't attack in neat formations like Coalition pilots. Instead, they scattered in all directions, using unpredictable patterns that made them nearly impossible to target effectively. They struck fast, hit hard, and disappeared before the enemy could respond. But the Coalition had numbers on their side. They recovered from the initial shock and began to coordinate their response. Thousands of ships turned their weapons toward the Indomitable. Evasive maneuvers, Hawk commanded. Don't let them get a target lock. The Indomitable twisted and turned with surprising agility for such a large vessel. Its point defense systems shot down incoming missiles by the hundreds. But some got through. The ship shuddered as explosions tore into its armor. Hull breach on Deck 7, a damage control officer reported. Sealing affected sections. Hawk watched the tactical display. The Coalition was trying to surround them, to trap the Indomitable in a killing box. He couldn't allow that. Activate the cloaking system, he ordered. Sir, the cloak only works for short periods. Once we fire weapons, they'll see us again. I know. But we only need a few seconds. The Indomitable vanished from Coalition sensors. For a brief moment, the enemy fleet fired blindly, unsure where their target had gone. In that moment of confusion, the human ship repositioned itself behind the Coalition line. When it decloaked, the Indomitable's weapons were aimed directly at the Coalition command ship. Fire everything, Hawk said quietly. Every weapon on the ship discharged simultaneously. The Coalition flagship, a massive dreadnought called Unity's Promise, took the full brunt of the assault. Its shields collapsed and its hull split apart. The ship broke into 3 pieces, each tumbling away in different directions. The Coalition fleet reeled. They had never fought an enemy like this. Humans didn't follow the accepted rules of warfare. They didn't care about honor or fair combat. They only cared about winning. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Coalition fleet, the communications officer said. They're requesting a ceasefire. Hawk's eyes narrowed. Denied. They came here to destroy us. Now they'll learn the cost of that decision. The battle raged on. Human fighters continued their relentless attacks, focusing on command and control vessels. The automated weapons platforms kept firing until they ran out of ammunition or were destroyed. The Indomitable moved through the battlefield like a predator, striking and withdrawing before the Coalition could concentrate their fire. But the damage was mounting. The human ship was bleeding atmosphere from dozens of breaches. Systems were failing across multiple decks. Casualties were rising. Commander Stone grabbed Hawk's arm. Sir, we've done enough. We've proven our point. We need to withdraw while we still can. Hawk looked at the tactical display. The Coalition fleet was in disarray, but they still had thousands of ships. The Indomitable had maybe a few hours of fighting left before critical systems failed. Set course for the outer marker, he finally ordered. All fighters returned to the ship. We're leaving. As the Indomitable began its withdrawal, Hawk opened a channel on all Coalition frequencies. His face appeared on screens throughout the enemy fleet. This is Admiral James Hawk. Today you came to destroy one ship. One crew. A handful of survivors from a species you tried to erase. Look around you. Count your losses. Remember this feeling. Remember the names of the ships we destroyed. Remember the crews that won't be going home. He paused, letting his words sink in. This is what happens when you threaten humanity. This is what happens when you assume we'll go quietly. We are outnumbered. We are outgunned. But we will never surrender. We will never forgive. And we will never stop fighting. The transmission ended. The Indomitable accelerated away, its damaged hull leaving a trail of debris. The Coalition fleet didn't pursue. They were too busy counting their dead. In the command center of what remained of the 7th Fleet, Admiral Korvax stared at the damage reports in disbelief. Nearly 800 ships destroyed or disabled. Thousands of casualties. All from one human vessel. What are your orders, sir? His second officer asked quietly. Korvax couldn't answer. How could he explain this to the Council? How could he tell them that the extinct humans had just humiliated the Coalition's finest fleet? In the darkness of the exclusion zone, the Indomitable limped towards safety. Hawk knew this was just the beginning. The Coalition wouldn't forgive this embarrassment. They would come again with even more ships. But now they would come with fear. Now they would remember why their ancestors had been terrified of humanity. And that was worth everything. The Indomitable drifted through space, its hull still smoking from the battle. Emergency crews worked frantically to seal breaches and restore damaged systems. In the medical bay, doctors treated the wounded while trying not to think about the 37 crew members who hadn't survived the fight. Admiral Hawk sat in his command chair, exhausted but unable to rest. Commander Stone approached with a damage report that made grim reading. Life support at 60%. Main engines operational but damaged. Weapons systems depleted. They had won the battle but barely. Sir, we're receiving multiple transmissions, the communications officer said suddenly. They're coming from all over the sector. Some are using old human military encryption codes. Hawk sat up straight. Put them through. The main screen flickered to life, showing dozens of different faces. Humans. Some were old, some young. They broadcast from cargo ships, mining stations, hidden colonies on remote worlds. People who had been living in the shadows for 3 centuries, afraid to reveal themselves. Is it true? Asked an elderly woman from a settlement on the edge of known space. Did you really fight the Coalition fleet and survive? It's true, Hawk confirmed. We're battered, but we're alive. A middle-aged man appeared, tears streaming down his face. We thought we were alone. We thought everyone else was gone. When we heard your transmission, when we saw what you did, you gave us hope. More and more humans joined the channel. They came from everywhere. Mechanics on alien space stations. Refugees working in frontier mines. Families who had hidden their heritage for generations to avoid persecution. The galaxy had tried to erase humanity, but life had found a way. How many? Hawk asked quietly. How many of us are left? The communications officer worked quickly, compiling the data. Current count shows approximately 4 million humans scattered across 200 different locations. Most are small groups, but there are a few larger settlements. 4 million. Out of 42 billion. Less than 0.1% had survived. But it was more than Hawk had dared to hope. This is what we're going to do, he said, addressing all the humans listening. Anyone who wants to join us, transmit your coordinates. We'll find a way to bring you together. We'll find a safe place to rebuild. But I won't lie to you, the Coalition won't let this go. They'll come for us again. Joining me means accepting that risk. We accept, said a young pilot broadcasting from a salvage ship. We've been running and hiding our whole lives. We're done being afraid. Others echoed the sentiment. Across the galaxy, humans who had lived in shame and secrecy were standing up. They were remembering who they were. While Hawk coordinated the gathering of survivors, something else was happening. The battle footage had leaked. Someone on one of the Coalition ships had recorded the fight and transmitted it across the galactic network before military sensors could stop it. Within hours, billions of beings across thousands of worlds watched as one human ship tore through the Coalition's 7th Fleet. They saw the tactics, the determination, the sheer refusal to surrender. Some viewers were horrified. Others were impressed. Many were terrified. On the Coalition homeworld, the Council convened in another emergency session. This time there was no debate, only shock and anger. How? Ambassador Therax demanded. How did one ship destroy 800 of ours? The military analysts had no good answers. The humans had used unconventional tactics. They had prepared the battlefield. They had fought with a level of desperation and creativity that Coalition forces weren't trained to handle. We need to respond, Krenth of the Ctheran Empire insisted. If we let this stand, we look weak. Other species will start questioning our authority. But before they could decide on a course of action, something appeared on their long-range sensors that made everyone freeze. Ships. Human ships. Not just the Indomitable, but others emerging from deep space. They were old vessels, centuries out of date, but they were operational. Apparently, some human military units had also gone into hiding, preserving their vessels and waiting for a chance to return. A heavy cruiser called the Defied. A destroyer squadron led by the Relentless. A medical ship named the Mercy. One by one they appeared, answering Hawk's call. How many? Counselor Mira whispered. Current count is 47 vessels of various classes, a sensor operator reported. And more signatures are appearing every hour. The humans had been scattered, broken, and nearly destroyed. But they had survived. And now they were coming together. Hawk stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as the other ships took up formation around him. It wasn't a large fleet by Coalition standards, but it was a start. Commander Stone stood beside him, watching the view screen with tears in her eyes. What now, sir? She asked. Hawk pulled up a star map showing former human territories. Dozens of systems that had once belonged to humanity, now occupied by Coalition species who had claimed them after the genocide. Now we go home, he said simply. We return to our worlds. And we make it clear to the galaxy that we're not asking permission. He opened a transmission on all frequencies, ensuring that every species in the galaxy would hear his words. I am Admiral James Hawk of the United Nations starship Indomitable. 300 years ago, the Ctheran Empire attempted to exterminate humanity. They burned our worlds. They murdered billions of innocent people. And the Galactic Coalition watched and did nothing. Then they divided our territories among themselves like thieves over stolen goods. He paused, his voice growing harder. But humanity survived. We always survive. We're coming home. We're reclaiming what was stolen from us. Any coalition forces occupying former human systems have 30 days to withdraw peacefully. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war. Across the galaxy, the reaction was immediate. Some coalition species began evacuating their settlements in human territory, not wanting to risk conflict. Others dug in, refusing to abandon valuable mining operations and colonies. The Ctheran Empire mobilized its full military, determined to finish what they had started centuries ago. But other species were less certain. They had seen what one human ship could do. What could 47 ships accomplish? What if there were more humans hiding somewhere, waiting to reveal themselves? Fear spread through coalition space like a virus. The species they had tried to erase was back. And it was angry. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Hawk prepared for the long struggle ahead. He knew this was just the beginning. The coalition wouldn't give up their holdings easily. There would be more battles, more casualties, more pain. But for the first time in 300 years, humans had hope. They had each other. And they had something worth fighting for. Commander Stone approached with a message. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the outer colonies. More ships are responding to your call. They're asking where to rendezvous. Hawk smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. Tell them to meet us at Earth, he said. It's time to go home. The human fleet turned as one and began the long journey back to where it all started. Behind them, the galaxy watched and wondered what would happen next. One thing was certain, humanity would not be defied. Not again. Never again. The age of coalition dominance was ending. A new chapter was beginning. And the galaxy would learn to respect the species that refused to die. In the darkness of space, the Indomitable led its growing fleet toward home. Toward Earth. Toward the future. Humanity had returned.